So guys, when I have a graph, obviously we're gonna have our two axes, and what did we say these are called? X and Y. Okay, X and Y. We know that this one is the X, this one is the Y. What did we say yesterday goes on the X-axis? Independent variable. So I'm gonna put down here, I'm gonna label whatever my independent variable was, and I'm gonna put the unit here. And then what goes on the Y-axis? The dependent variable. So over here I would put dependent, and I would label whatever the unit was. And then to write my title, guys, your title is always gonna go up here at the top of your graph. And rather than come up with some crafty little title, your title actually is really easy once you actually label the axes, because your title just becomes the dependent variable versus the independent variable. So dv versus iv. And then we'll actually put a real title into a graph in a minute. Okay, the third thing we said it needs are equal increments on each axis. And so you guys, we need a scale. Also, we are always going to use these cross lines that are on the graph paper. That's why we're using graph paper for a graph. We don't make them on regular paper, and we don't just put random marks on the graph paper. We actually use the lines on the graph paper. That's why they are there. Okay, so on the bottom, I'm going to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to go by 5. So I'm going to say 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Do I have to use the same scale on the y-axis?
Yes.
No, you don't, okay? You do not, but the deal is you still need equal increments, okay? So I counted by 5s on my x-axis, but on my y-axis, I could decide to go by 1s, and I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So long as you keep the same increments within an axis, the x and the y don't have to be the same. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so like on my x, if I'm gonna go by 5s, I go by 5s the whole time. But then on my y, I can go by something different so long as I do it the whole time. Okay? Now, if I have a line graph, obviously I'm gonna plot some points. Okay, and then I would, make my connections and whatnot. Okay, if I am making a bar graph down here instead of numbers, I'm gonna have segments labeled as something else. So like down here, I might have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I might have a bar that looks like this. Okay? So a bar graph will be a little bit different because on the independent variable side, we're going to have words instead of numbers, and then we're going to have bars. Somebody brought up a point in an earlier class, can my bars touch? No, that is something called a histogram, and that is not what we are making right now. You want a space between your bars when making a bar graph. Okay? 2 quick examples, all right? 2 quick examples. First off, I'm going to scoot this up. I'm going to still leave it there so we can see it. Yesterday, we started off class, or in the middle of class, you guys made a data table for that experiment with the fertilizer and the tomatoes, right? And so if I want to make a graph for this, I'm going to go ahead and have my x-axis and my y-axis. So I've got my x and my y. Which of these is going to go on the x-axis?
Amount of fertilizer.
Amount of fertilizer, because that is my independent variable. So the amount of fertilizer, and then I put the units behind it in parentheses. So I put milliliters. Then what am I going to put on my y-axis?
Number of tomatoes.
Number of tomatoes. Is there a unit for this?
No.
No? Okay. So So I've got my axes labeled right now, so what does that make my title?
Amount of fertilizer versus. Oh, number of
Title, I
tomatoes.
mix it up and I say this versus this. So number of tomatoes, yeah. So number of tomatoes versus amount of fertilizer. What's an easy way to remember that? You read from left to right. Okay, so number of tomatoes versus amount of fertilizer. What were my amounts of fertilizer?
50, 100, and 150.
Okay, so I'm gonna start at 0, and then guys, I'm gonna space this out a little bit. So I'm gonna do 2 lines between each rather than just one, because you would like your graph to take up as much room as possible. Makes it easier to read, it makes it easier to if I say, hey, can you interpret, predict how many tomatoes would be produced if I used 75 milliliters. It's easier to predict from a graph when it's larger. So I'm gonna put in my 50, 100, and 150, just to spread it out a little bit. And then, what should my scale be on the side, maybe? By tens? Could I spread it out even more?
5.
Let's go by maybe 5s. Or, if I did it by tens, that would be like I did on the bottom and have 2 spaces. Okay, so I'm gonna go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. What is my first data point?
50, 30.
50, 30. So I go over to 50 and up to 30 and put a point. Then I've got
120.
100 up to 20, and then
150,
to
17.
17, and I've got to kind of estimate where the 17 is because I don't have it exactly on there. And then you would draw your line, and you would be finished. That's a line graph. Okay, can we make a quick bar graph?
Sure.
Okay, I have some data that we made up during first period. So again, I'm going to get this set up with my X and Y axis. So you've got your X and Y axis. What's going to go on the X axis? Favorite color. If ever you have non-numeric data, that's going to go on the X-axis. That's going to be your independent variable. What's going to go on the Y?
Number of students.
Number of students. What's my title?
Number of students versus favorite color.
Yeah. Number of students versus favorite color. All right, now I need bars. So at the bottom, I'm going to make this space here for red. Then I'm going to skip a line between. This is going to be for blue. And this is going to be for purple. So I've got those labeled. What should my scale be on the side?
1.
2.
I'm gonna go by 2s. Now, you could really go by anything. I just didn't leave enough space to do 9 individuals without running into my title. So on my little one now, I'm gonna go by 2s. I would also suggest, guys, that you use fairly easy counting numbers. In elementary school, I know you guys learn to count by 2s and to count by 5s. Now, if you're good at counting by 3s, great, use 3s. If you're good at counting by 4s, great, use 4s. I like to use stuff that's easy for me. 2s, 5s, 10s, things like that, okay? So in this case, I'm gonna go by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And how many students liked red?
3.
So I go between the 2 and the 4. And I've got my bar. How many liked blue?
7.
So I go up here and I find the 7. And I get my blue bar. And how many like purple?
9.
So I go up here and I find the 9.
Surprisingly, all of these are odd numbers.
I know, random, isn't it?
What a coincidence.
All right, So there is my bar graph. What questions do you have? None yet?